Problems in the jail.
All right, let's call our finance meeting to order at 5:30, July 18th. All members are present. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published and also the minutes from July 7th. Moved by Virginia, second by John. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak for the committee? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6 on the agenda. The approval of new jail construction and the financing resolutions. The first one is item A, which is the approval of a recommendation to the board for initial financing, general obligation bonds and or promissory notes in the amount of $1 million to $3 million is determined by the county board for the construction of a new jail facility. That resolution is in the packet, and this is the first time that these numbers have been actually coming in front of the finance committee. We've looked at options that are available. We know what the bid prices were on the project, and we know what the initial authorization a year ago was to proceed with a debt of 21 million, or borrowing capacity of 21 million. Since that has changed, and there's a number of options. The jail study committee at the last meeting recommended option C on the information that everybody has. And now this resolution seems to be moving away from that number and looking to plug in a number here. That option C was actually issuing an additional million in debt, which should have been 22 million. Now there's a blank on this resolution. So I don't know if the board is looking for a recommendation from the finance committee on this, or if the finance committee wants to do nothing on this and let the board fill in the number. That's up to this committee. So anyone want to comment on this?
Go ahead. No, I'd kind of like to hear Paul's take on this.
I handed out updated options. I added 2 on there specifically. One, a $2 million additional debt as was requested. And just as a benchmark, I guess, the first one there, which is labeled option F, if we would bond for all of it, what would the impact of that be? So if we would start with bonding the most and work our way to the least, we could bond $6.5 million, get about 1.1 million of interest, and that would make up the $7.7 million difference. And as you can see below, there's the impact on the rate and the 100,000, 200,000 of assessed value. Option B and C were there last time, have not changed. Option E kind of splits the difference. Would issue 2 million of additional debt with a similar impact on the rate and the actual assessed value of 1 in 200,000. As I stated last meeting, I believe, I did calculate at the request, as requested, an option that has 0 debt. I am not in favor of that last time. I'm not this time. Last time I said I would recommend 1 million or more for the reasons that one is digging very deep, and it was projecting forward a couple of years and numbers that aren't concrete. You know, we're going to get our Dominion payments. We're going to get our broadband loan payments back. Projecting forward a general fund surplus is iffy, and I wouldn't run my household that way. I wouldn't recommend any else did either. And I'm certainly not going to recommend that the county project forward that big a number that many years. So that would leave with a recommended of at least $1 million. I'm actually, you know, the county resident and the finance director and me likes the $2 and $3 million. I, you know, as a resident, I like 2 million. As a county finance director, 3 million gives you a little more cushion. But either one of those, any 3 of those or 4 of those, can make this work without digging so deep that we shoot ourselves in the foot. Couple other items. Issuing debt now versus later. Let's say we run short, we decide we would issue later. There's some things going in our favor right now that may not be there later. Interest rates now are pretty good. Most likely they'll go up or stay the same. That's, you know, if you had a crystal ball, you could tell that. We have to remember we're in a market now where interest rates are such that we could issue debt at 4% and earn 4.75 to 5. That could go up a little bit too, depending what the Fed does in July. That doesn't happen very often. Our bond rating right now is good. We have 2 good years in 2022 and 21. That will be a part of the rating this next go round, assuming this goes forward. Those are solid years, the best years we've had in my 8 years here. I believe we'll stay the same, possibly even go up. I'm probably biased in that, but I believe we can go up a little bit. Then, of course, there's the issue of one large issue. There's going to be less bond issue expenses than if we do one now and a smaller one later. If you issue debt for $1 million and smaller amounts like that, there's still some minimum amount, 40 to 60,000, that's it costs you to issue that. That would be substantially less if we were to issue it now. So there's some pros and cons of either one. How does it affect the taxpayer? How does it affect the county's finances? And in between options C, E, B, and F is probably the range of possibilities. Again, if D is what is selected, it's my job to make it work. I can't recommend doing that for the addition because of the additional risk of projecting forward. In all of those, I made a point of calculating anything we took out of general fund, so that balance stays above 45%. Currently, well, last year we we're about 70%. It's been building quite a bit. Right now, we're about 60, low 60s. And if we go through with the additional 1.9 on the general fund balance, we'll be exactly at 45%. Our calculated fund balance policy for the general fund is 25 to 35%. That's what we need. It's worked well for us the last 7-ish years. We went through a lot of thought and passed that and followed it. This would still give us a 10% cushion just in case, but still give us some towards the project. And other comments I saw out there, economic development, yes, if we dig into the economic development fund, that means the next project, or a project could probably not happen in the next few years, probably 3 to 5. I think I heard a comment to that KCEDC funding may be at risk with the $40,000 over the last 3 years anyway. When the administrator put out his budget, that was a part of the general fund and general revenues, eventually switched over to the economic development fund. So if that was the decision of the board, you wanted to continue funding that, I believe that would still, that $40,000 would still be available to fund that. And I don't know if I've mentioned it anywhere before, but the statements went out last week. And in the capital project fund between last year and this year, the county has spent $1,002,000. I'm sure there's a few outstanding bills yet on this project. That would be on the engineering, the architect, and any design process that's already been spent on this. That may or may not be a sway in the decision making, but that's part of the information that should be out there. Anything else? Yes.
What is the bond rating right now? What do we have for rate?
There are two companies that primarily do municipal ratings, Moody's and S&P. Moody's has us rated at A1, which is a high. There's 3 ratings in the high level. There's best, which is AAA. We probably will never get there because of our size of the municipality. High, there's 3 ratings. So if we number these from 1 to 10, we're number 4 on the scale. S&P has us an A minus. I'm sorry, I had that backwards. S&P has us at a number 4. They were the most recent one to rate us in 2017 with the refinancing. We got a rating from Moody's of an A1, which is upper medium. I believe both of those can go up 1 because of the last 2 years being as strong as they were. So we would go with S&P this time. I believe we would maintain or increase from an AA minus, hopefully up to an AA, and stay in the high. Dipping down from the high to the upper medium will cost at least I think it was 0.2% on our rates on the bonds. Over $21 million bond or more over 20 years, that will add up. We're not bad. I think we can do better. I think our statements from the last 2 years support us being 1 higher. But ultimately, that's a decision of Moody's or S&P, and this time we would go with S&P again. Did that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
So with cash on hand, then where does that leave us to do really any other type of capital projects of any kind?
Well,
We need a new loader, we need a this or that. Obviously, the highway shop, we said that's gonna be put on hold.
the highway shop itself, that's a few years down the road. Talking highway equipment, the highway internal service fund from their operations pays for and budgets and schedules replacing their equipment. Other departments in other funds, general fund, human services, land information, we routinely budget about 600 to 700,000 in outlay, and that would continue on those replacement type items, vehicles, building maintenance, computers, the typical stuff. If we're talking big highway buildings, those are the discussions that would, those are the projects that would be delayed because either we would have to borrow more or we'd have to wait for some fund to build up between now and when they're ready to go.
As it relates to not taking into consideration any debt. The numbers that are basically coming out of the general fund and the economic development fund and a few other things that have been proposed, that's only going to occur during the period of the construction till we're into the new facility. That's not going to extend out there as long as the debt is.
No, that's to build the building. One time.
So basically after 2 years, roughly, that we're going to be back to operations as normal, except for additional debt.
Yes and no. We would be operating as normal all the way through. Our fund balances were here, would be down here. And if we continue our trend over the last few years, we build them back up again, assuming we're following the last 8 years. The one-time funds like the Economic Development Fund, the only items coming back into there now would be some payments from the 2 broadband loans. The Dominion payments would be done coming in and they would be spent on this project.
Anything else? I think this is the issue we have to deal with. If we do something on this, the rest, or the board does something on this, the other 2 resolutions are obvious, they're going to pass. This is the one that has to. I think that the finance committee should make a recommendation to the board.
Why not bond it all? Cash trap county, just have a bigger tax increase. That'd be the option.
That
Would be the option F.
option F. That would be an additional 6.5 million-ish. And if you look down, you would see the impact on the tax bills.
Does anybody want to do anything on this, or should we take no action on this and leave it up to the board to fill in that number? Up to this committee.
Tom, I think the only reason that the number was blank, part of the reason the number was blank is because that language came from our bond council. They didn't know what number the board was going to go with, so they left it open for the board to decide or for this committee to decide pushing forward once we have that number. Whatever recommendation is makes sense.
Our last jail committee meeting, that the recommendation at that meeting was to go with option C as being the one that the option that does the least amount of disturbance to fund balances. And personally, I still stand by the option, using option C. It's granted the per thousand value using option C is 25 cents. Yes, option D is a lower assessed value, but the thing is, was this, as Paul stated, is a very risky option. It throws us into a questionable fund balance that we may not.
And I would say that will set us back about 10 or 11 years. I was talking to the treasurer, and sometime before I started, I'm not sure what year it was. When December would come around, that was our low cash point of the year. So we'd be calling departments, asking for deposits so that our checks would be covered. We don't want to go back to that. Option D of all of them has, it's not going to put us into bankruptcy, but it opens up a lot of risk of not being able to cover it, not having the fund balance to sustain the cash flow the way we should do it.
I've had input from some other board members, and I haven't heard any definitive idea on which plan or whatever to go forward with. I think coming from a few of us on this committee, it's going to be a moot point. It's going to go to the full board, and everybody's going to have this discussion there and what they feel and what their constituents have said to them. And I mean, our recommendation on A to Z, to me, is not relevant. Just something to the scale of this. It's not a cut and dried thing. It's not something just sitting before you. It's like a yes or no question. A lot of variables here.
Oh, yeah, there is a recommendation, and that's the resolutions are based on the, came from the deal study. Steve's option C. So that's as far as any financing recommendations have gone.
I agree with Jeff. I think it should go to the board because we're gonna have this whole same conversation all over again.
So we'll basically take no action. Unless somebody wants to make a motion.
Paul, if he says, if Paul says the way it go, I believe that Paul does it, and if he goes for one of these, I don't have a problem making a motion to go forward, but I think we need Paul to set the right direction where we're going.
From what I'm hearing, I think it sounds to me like the committee would rather have send this to the board without a formal recommendation.
That's my position.
I don't want to make a decision based on.
Personally, I'd love to see us make the recommendation.
Right.
Yes, I know where you are, but the thing is, I don't think that we're gonna get the votes on this committee
Yeah.
to send that recommendation forward to the board. I mean, I could make that recommendation, that motion, and see where it goes.
I will second.
Right, I'll make it.
What is actually the motion?
The motion would be to send, to recommend that we move forward with option C and recommend that to the board.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 3 in favor of the motion, 2 opposed. So that resolution then would be the number in the resolution would be not to exceed 22 million. Is that correct?
Well, it would be for the additional
1 million.
$1 million.
Additional.
So we-
Just for clarification and for full transparency, because the board doesn't really know what we're doing here other than looking at these actions. You get to committee reports and the chair gets committees. I'm going to make a statement that we discussed this resolution The committee is making a recommendation to the board, but that's only a recommendation. And that's all it is. Is that fair enough?
Well, that's all the recommendation ever is.
That's it. And as far as the other two resolutions are concerned, I don't think there's anything that's in those resolutions that's referencing the finance committee at all. Yes, there is. The resolution on non-budgeted funds, and that's the layout of the money that would be used regardless of what debt we use. Depending on the option, those would have to be.
If his recommendation was option C, doesn't that cover both resolutions? We're gonna issue 1 million more debt, and we're gonna do the other fund balances.
I mean, option C has it all in there. That would be one plan.
I think you've already given our recommendation. Okay, I'll figure this out.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. Those are also in option C.
Looking at one resolution without the other two didn't make any sense. So they're all in there, but make the recommendation that you want to meet.
Okay. Okay, then I don't think we have to do anything else with the other resolutions. Is there any further discussion on this jail issue at this point?
See it?
Okay, the only other thing I would have under other such matters listed here, and we had talked about the wraparound housing at the last finance meeting. I don't know why that's not on the agenda, or is there more information we need before it can come to the board?
The only reason we didn't have it on the agenda for this one. Enough on the board's
Okay.
plate already, and we thought that giving that separate consideration would be more appropriate.
So we will see this in the August
It'll be in
meeting.
the August.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, remember Thursday, August 3rd, 8 o'clock. That's changed because I can't be here. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Jeff, second by Virginia, to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.